Okay, welcome to a special edition interview with Brewin. And today we're not exactly talking books. There is going to be a little book talk, but mostly we're going to be talking music because he just released on
The
YouTube, at least. I'm
calling.
not exactly sure about exactly how the release goes. I'm sure you can explain it to me. Um, uh, a concept horror album based on his novel, The Dark Horde. So I'm going to let you explain what this album is about.
So essentially, the album is called The Calling. It's a musical collective that I've put together, a grouping of musicians, vocalists, actors, artists, all coming together to create a concept album that is the musical prequel to my novel. And where the story on the album finishes is where the story in the book starts.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the book. I think the book came first, correct? Before the album?
Yes. So I published the book 2012, and they were always meant to exist in their own right, but yet be connected and give insight into the other as to what's going on. So the story in both the album and the book is set in 1989 in rural Victoria in Australia, so southeastern Australia, primarily in a small township that's called Howqua Hills in the book and the album.
Okay, is that based on any real place or is it just sort of an amalgamate?
So it is loosely based upon a town called Mansfield in the area. That's basically in the high country. And there's a nearby school um, campus that's called Timbertop. It's called Timber Home in the book, but it's very much based upon Timbertop, uh, which is a year 9 campus where you do hikes every weekend, you do cross country runs multiple times during the week. You have to go out and collect your own wood and chop your own wood for wood stove boilers, and everyone does chores and that sort of thing. So it's a pretty isolated campus, and perfect for setting horror stories.
So, is the horror sort of a supernatural type of?
Yes. So basically, the main antagonist of the story in the album is the Dark Horde themselves, which um, I did leave it somewhat vague as to exactly what they actually are. But essentially, you can think of them as some sort of demonic entity that's trying to get into our reality and cause trouble.
Yeah, well, that's always a good horror story. Causing
Yes.
trouble is the basis, I think, of all
Yeah.
horror.
Yeah.
So tell us about the album itself. How did that come about, and how did you decide to do go from a book to music? I mean, I know that you do both, but why did you decide to put them together?
Yeah, so I always had this idea, uh, primarily because I know a lot of musicians. I have a lot of friends in different bands, particularly in the space of heavy metal. Um, and yeah, it was some 20 years ago or so that it struck me, geez, I'd love to set part of this story to music, do a collaboration with some friends, and create a narrative experience. Um, you could say in many ways the template for the idea of how to execute the album really came from Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, that late 70s, I believe, where it's essentially a story set to music where you have the main narrator telling the story interspersed with songs with a vocalist and the appearance of actors throughout the the story of the different characters. So yes, the idea came about to create something like that, and tie the two together.
So it sounds like, I mean, it sounds like the genre of the album is heavy metal. You said, is it?
Yes, yes. So very much, particularly because it's set in '89, we wanted to create an '80s sort of sound to it as well. So that's where the '80s heavy metal sort of elements come in. But we also wanted to incorporate '80s horror soundtracks, sort of your John Carpenter esque sorts of sections and atmospherics.
It sounds almost like a stage musical in some way too.
Yes, yes. I mean, there's certainly, it's one of the things I get asked a lot is, when's there going to be a live performance and that sort of thing. I mean, it's really a studio project, but the idea is certainly there that, geez, wouldn't it be great to put on a stage or almost like a live play performance where you'd have actors as well as band and stage props and all the rest of that. But yeah, obviously there's a lot of logistics for that sort of thing. And yeah, there needs to be sufficient interest as well to justify doing it. But, yeah, it'd be great to do.
Okay, so I also know that the project had a bit of an evolution from there were previous versions as well. So tell
Yes.
us about that. Was there drama, or is it just
Yeah.
you know,
So
basic
it's been
time problems?
Yeah, so I mean, it's been a very long journey. There's probably about 8 different versions of the album, all demo versions, none of which have been released. So uh, there are different reasons why different versions didn't get to the final stage. Usually, it's just because it just didn't get finished. So whoever I was working with, um, you know, things just didn't work out just in terms of maybe they had other things going on. Usually they're in different bands or things like that anyway. And, the enthusiasm or the momentum petered out and a couple more years go by and then you think, all right, well, let's see if, we can get it going again with teaming up with different people. Hanny, who's you could say is the main driver of the music. He's been involved since 2006, I think, and he was always planning to have a minor role and was just going to do a track or two in collaboration with others. But it really took to get to the stage of him saying, you know what, how about I just steer the whole thing? And, that's what it took to get it actually finished and done. And we're all very, very proud of what we've achieved. And it's a lot of hard work over many years, but we can all look back at what we've created now and be proud of it.
So how was it working with the current collaboration? Because I know on the blog post I did. There's quite a few people involved in it. So tell us a little bit about the band.
Yeah, so the members, so my role, just to cover that off quickly, I write the lyrics and the concepts, and my role is, I suppose you could call it like the director of the project. So I communicate the ideas and what I'm seeking, but ultimately you leave it to the experts. The main musicians is Hanny that I've already mentioned. So Hanny has his own band, Black Majesty, that's been very successful internationally. And he's teamed up with Logan Jacobs. Logan has brought in a lot of that 80s horror soundtrack-esque sorts of elements into the album that makes it what it is as well. Then you have two other guest musicians that have each done a track of their own. So that is Chris Kane, who has his band I the Enemy, that is another very successful international band, and James Lowe is the other guest musician. You have Danny Siccardi as the main vocalist. His currently, well, his band is Wicked Smile, but he's also been with Pegasus in the past and I Fear, which are another two very well-known international bands. You've got Kevin Powell, who's he's a voice actor, international voice actor, and he is the main narrator of the story. And then you also have Dexter Seamus, who is he plays the role of young Henry, so Henry being the main character of the album. He plays him when he's 7 years old. You have Jane Brewin, who plays the role of his mother. And then you also have Andrew Caroline, who plays the role of Bernard Russell, who is a psychiatrist that Henry is taken to in the course of that. You also have Aldo Requena, who is an Argentinian artist, runs a couple of sites, Valgorth and Hammer Blaze, very successful internationally as well. And then you have the sound engineers, so the mixing and mastering is Ricardo Borges and Jens Bogren, and they're both based in Stockholm at Fascination Street Studios in Sweden. And I think I've covered everyone.
It sounds like it was quite an international project as well. So how
Yeah.
did that work? I'm assuming that it was recorded in parts throughout wherever people were.
Yeah, so most of us are based in Melbourne in Australia, with the exception of the artist. She's in Argentina, and the sound engineers in Stockholm. The rest of us, in Melbourne. So in terms of the raw files, the acting recordings, the sounds of the instruments, the vocals, the raw files were created or recorded here in Melbourne, and then sent over to the studio in Stockholm, where they were mixed and mastered. And the art, of course, wasn't generated in Melbourne, but all the rest of it was generated here. And I think I've answered your question.
Yeah. Okay, so you wrote the lyrics. So tell us a little bit about writing lyrics as opposed to writing a book. How is the mindset different?
Yeah, so to me, it's essentially like writing poetry. In fact, there's lines that are in the book that were written for the book that are used on the album because they're poetry lines. So I guess you could say I've always had an interest in writing poetry as well as writing fiction. And this is a great way to combine those two. And yeah, I mean, certainly the feedback has been, people have really responded to and engaged with the story as well as the lyrics and that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I write poetry and I also tried my hand at songwriting. So yeah, I think there's a little more involved with songwriting than just poetry, because it didn't work out for me at all.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you are you're needing to balance because I suppose the difference is one of the differences anyway is you have a chorus and verse structure that you wouldn't typically have with poetry. And
there's a lot of meter and rhythm.
Yes,
with the song lyrics.
Yes, counting syllables and structure of lines, and making sure it has the right emphasis on certain words, and it's a lot of fun to do.
Okay, so so the big question is, where can we find the album?
So the album is available currently as a digital release. We do have plans for a physical release as well, but we're not yet at a point that we can share those details. Um, in terms of where it's available digitally, it's basically any of your major platforms. So whether that's Amazon or Apple or iTunes or Spotify, it's also on Bandcamp. Um, I think it's about 120 different platforms it's available through. So um, it'd be hard, I think, to find a platform that it's not available on rather than anything else.
And so you've gone big and you've gone wide with it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's basically, and I'm happy to say this. So the distribution is through CD Baby. That it's basically set up to make things easier because especially when you consider we're independent, so it's all self-financed and everything at this stage, so anything we can do to make that burden easier is a good thing. So basically what CD Baby does is you provide the files to them and they distribute it everywhere basically. So um, makes it a lot easier to get it out to people, with the exception of Bandcamp that is a separate upload. But that's been a great avenue for people to find it as well.
Sounds similar to doing your audiobooks wide as well. So
Yes, yeah. There's many parallels between the music world and the writing world, I find.
yeah, we're all just independent artists trying to get our stuff out.
That's right. That's right.
Okay,
It's
and
not
I
easy.
believe you can find a sample on your YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, so on my YouTube channel, which is Brewin I Am, um, we have there's actually three lyric video singles. So they were studio produced lyric videos. There's trailers and things like that as well. But I've also put up there, it's a lyric video playlist for the entire album. So using the three studio produced lyric videos, but then I've put together, there's 12 tracks in total. So I've put together the other 9 myself. So it's basically, it's a way that someone can experience the album with all the lyrics and visuals to help convey the moods and that sort of thing of the story. So that's on my YouTube channel as well.
Yes, and there should be a link in the description for everyone to check it out. So be sure to do that, and we'll ask one more question before we wrap it up. And is there anything coming up for you for the Dark Horde or anything else?
Yeah, so I'm certainly not done with the Dark Horde. And yes, I mean, I'm always working on something creatively, usually multiple things. And you never really know what is going to get to completion first necessarily. But among the things that I can mention that are planned with regards to the Dark Horde is a sequel book. That's probably the main one for the moment, but there are certainly other ideas, different stages of how close they are to being finished around that as well. But certainly there's more to come.
Well, great. We look forward to that. And I'd like to thank you for being here today. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Anita.
And that's it for this special edition interview. And bye for now.